Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today I'm going to try to demystify the charging process for an EV. Now, this is specifically designed for people if it's your first time driving an EV, or if it is going to be the first time you're going to be driving an EV, and you've got a little bit of anxiety as to what to expect from the EV itself, from a charge perspective, from a range perspective, and also what to do and how to prepare for charging an electric vehicle. Now, there's a couple of key factors that I wanted to go over that's probably worthwhile distinguishing at the start. One is whether or not you're driving a Tesla, and two, if you're not driving a Tesla, what sort of charging you're going to require and over what sort of period of time. Now, I'm just going to touch upon the Tesla aspect. If you are borrowing somebody's Tesla, or you've got a courtesy car and it happens to be a Tesla or a rental car or whatever it might be, to charge them is very, very easy. You just rock up to what's called a Tesla supercharger and you plug the vehicle in. There is more than likely, about 99% chance that there's already an account set up for the vehicle. The Tesla supercharging network will recognize that individual vehicle and will start to sort of pump in the juice, as it were. And the battery pack will slowly start to increase in its charge. And when you're finished, you just kind of unplug and off you go. Well, you might ask yourself, well, who's being charged for this electricity? Because nothing is for free. And you'd be correct in asking that question. And the key thing is, if it's a rental car that you've borrowed, the rental car company will be charged for it, and then they'll retrospectively bill you for the amount of electricity that you've pumped into that vehicle. It's also possible that if you've borrowed a friend's Tesla, they'll already have an account set up, and that when you use the supercharger network to charge the vehicle itself, I should say, they will be charged for it. So their credit card will be billed, and essentially you're spending your friend's money. So if you've borrowed your friend's Tesla, and you want to do the right thing and charge it up before you take it back to them, just be mindful that their credit card is going to be billed. So you might want to go up with a pizza, perhaps, or some sort of fizzy beverage. But essentially, just know that somebody's going to be paying for the charge for a Tesla, but it is phenomenally easy to charge up a Tesla because there's superchargers pretty much all over the place. And even if you live in one of the busiest areas where the superchargers are completely full all the time, there is a wonderful community of people who drive Teslas, and they're completely aware that other people may need juice as well, and they do kind of support themselves. So you wouldn't necessarily need to wait a particularly long time. And I'm not saying that it's completely busy all the time at the superchargers. There might be certain times of day where they might be quite busy, but for the most part, the community of, in fact, not just Teslas, EV people or EV drivers tend to have this camaraderie that's associated with them for the most part. I'm not saying all of it is completely rosy, but mostly people who drive EVs are relatively helpful people. Just be aware that Teslas are phenomenally easy to charge. You just rock up to a supercharger. In fact, in order to find one, you don't even have to sort of remember where they are. Teslas come fully equipped with being able to sort of identify where the superchargers are. It's already built into the infotainment unit. And as soon as you put supercharger and you do a search for it, it will come up with a whole host of superchargers that are available to you. And the order in which the vehicle places them in the search is from closest to the furthest generally, and that's how it defaults, and you can kind of click to the one that's closest to you and start driving to it. And what you might notice is that there'll be a few noises, few preparations that the car itself makes. It's called, well, they call it preconditioning the battery, so that when you do get to the supercharger, the car or the battery pack itself is at the optimum temperature to be able to receive fast charging. So it's not throttling itself back. By throttling, I mean, throttle as in gas pedal. I'm not saying throttle as in like strangle. So essentially, when you get to the supercharger, the vehicle will be primed and ready to receive the fastest possible charge that particular supercharger will be able to provide. Now, for the most part, all superchargers are what's called DC chargers, direct current chargers. And although all of them are very, very quick in comparison to some of the alternatives that might be available from alternative vendors, not Tesla, not all superchargers are created equally, and not all superchargers fast at the fastest rate. However, you're still going to be getting a lot of charge per minute or per hour of charge using a supercharger, irrespective of whether or not it's one of the slowest superchargers that are available. There are exceptions to the rule, but these are very much corner cases. For example, there are cars available from Kia or Hyundai that are much more capable, in theory, to be able to charge much, much quicker. But the infrastructure for them is not necessarily widespread, and it isn't the easiest thing, firstly, to find it. And then when you do find the actual chargers that are charging faster than the Tesla superchargers, or the conventional Tesla superchargers, I should say, they are few and far between, and for the most part going to be available somewhere in in the back end of nowhere, basically. So that's Teslas. So we've covered how you can find the charger, we've covered how you get to it, and we've covered how you would pay for it. Essentially, you'd be retrospectively billed for it if it's like a rental car company, or your friends will pick up the tab, or if you borrowed a courtesy car from a dealership where your car is getting repaired and they happen to have given you a Tesla as a courtesy car, they will be billed for it, and chances are you're going to get a retrospective bill based on the amount of charge that the vehicle has taken while it's under your care. But what happens if you've got another car that's not a Tesla, say, as I mentioned, Kia or Hyundai, or perhaps Rivian or Lucid, all sorts of other different sort of cars that are available for you to be able to purchase or borrow from friends. And with electric cars becoming more and more prominent as time goes by, it's a good to fair chance that when you do borrow a vehicle from a friend or a family member, it may end up being an electric. So you just worthwhile having a few apps already downloaded onto your phone with your profile set up and your credit card stored. It's completely free to download these apps, to create your profiles, make sure it's secured, and you can have two-factor authentication. All of those things are paramount to have because you're going to be storing credit card details in these apps. But once you've downloaded these apps, it's completely free to use. The app is free to use, but obviously when you do use the electrical capabilities to charge an electric vehicle, using the infrastructure, you'll be charged for the electricity that you've used. The key one for me is ChargePoint. That's one app, 100% download ChargePoint, create an account for yourself and have that available to you to use. The others are what I would call more sort of long-term fast charging capable apps or infrastructures that's going to be available to you. The other one is called EVgo. So we've got ChargePoint, EVgo, as well as Electrify America. So those are the three apps I would say is quite paramount for you to have in order to be able to charge your electric vehicle that isn't a Tesla. However, I should caveat here, Teslas are conventional electric vehicles. The difference between a Tesla from a charging capability or charging architecture perspective versus all other car manufacturers and their availability and architecture for charging is the connector. The connector for Teslas is what's called an NACS connector. It doesn't really matter what it means, but it's just an acronym. More and more vehicles will switch to the NACS connector, and this is actually specific to the US, hence the NA North America, and NA stands for North America. But anyway, I don't want to bore you with finer details. More and more manufacturers will switch to the NACS architecture as time goes on, but for the time being, there is this other alternative, which you may have seen already. If you haven't, don't worry about it. And I'll flash up what the slower connector looks like, sort of somewhere up here right now, and what the faster connector looks like. Again, that'll be up here somewhere. I've not decided where to put it, but you're probably looking at it right now. Okay, so the key one here is, so we've got the slower connector, what it looks like, so it's like a J something, 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 whatever it might be. Again, the acronyms don't really matter. This is what the slower charger looks like, the adapter. And the faster one is just an additional two prongs at the bottom of that. So again, this is what it looks like. So those two will be available to you through ChargePoint mainly, and a few other sort of more left field, less prominent charging architecture or infrastructures that might be available to you to be able to sort of charge vehicles at. The slower chargers can go up to about 6 kilowatts per hour. And if you've got a 60 kilowatt hour battery in your vehicle, well, it's going to take you 10 hours to charge that vehicle, give or take. That's called AC charging, so AC, alternative current charging, which is quite available. It's more prominently available. Again, in the US, it's not available in the home unless people who own the home have specifically had the infrastructure built into it. So you can actually charge a vehicle using the 2-pin house outlets that people have all over the houses or their garages. But for the most part, that's going to be phenomenally slow to charge. To put it into comparison, if you use a 2-pin outlet wall socket versus the slower sort of J something charger that kind of looks like this, the difference is 1 kilowatt per hour versus 6 kilowatts per hour. So it's a 6-fold difference. 1 kilowatt per hour is phenomenally slow to actually charge a vehicle. Maybe slightly over 1 kilowatt per hour. 6 is much better, but when you're out and about and you've only got 10, 15 minutes of a stop, so you want to sort of get yourself maybe a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and get yourself a sandwich while the electric vehicle is charging, you want to sort of continue on in your journey, you want to switch to what's called DC or direct current charging structures that might be available. Again, that's available through ChargePoint. It's available through Electrify America. In fact, are brilliant when they work to do DC charging at the highest possible rate that's available to you. And EVgo is another one. As I said, those three apps will give you the ability to charge the car at a faster rate. So instead of it charging at 6 kilowatts per hour, we can go all the way up for 70, 80, 90, 100, 150, 200, 300 kilowatts per hour, which is phenomenally quick. These, unfortunately, the DC chargers aren't as prominently available, but the infrastructure is actually improving. But as long as you've got the three apps that I've mentioned, ChargePoint, EVgo, as well as Electrify America, already set up in your phone with your profiles at hand, no matter which electric car that you borrow, you will be able to charge the vehicles at a higher rate of speed than that would be available to you if you were to just try and plug that vehicle in your garage using the 2-pin socket that's just going to be using the household outlet charging speeds, which is not really workable when you consider the vast battery capacities that the modern EVs come with. To put it into perspective, let's just say, we're rounding down a little bit now, but let's just say that a Tesla comes with a 60 kilowatt hour battery, or say a Kia or a Hyundai comes with a 70 kilowatt hour or maybe 80 kilowatt hour battery. These are big batteries. The Ford Lightning, which is the Ford F-150 Lightning that's available through Ford, and that's their EV truck, it has north of 100 kilowatts, and that's going to take an absolute age to try to charge that vehicle. It's one of my favorite trucks, by the way, the F-150 Lightning. I wouldn't necessarily buy one until they actually, Ford are probably in the works right now, building the new F-150 Lightning that's probably going to have the battery preconditioning system. At the moment it doesn't have it, which I think is a major oversight, but anyway, let's put that to one side. The key aspect of any of the car charging apps that I've recommended to you right now, whether it's ChargePoint, EVgo, or Electrify America, you have the ability to filter. So use the filter function, and I've got some examples up right now where you can change the speed at which you want to charge. So you can limit the charges that are going to be slower than that. So unless there's a major emergency, I'd say plan your route, use the charges that are available to you at the speed at which it's going to be most convenient to you, and you use the actual onboard inbuilt filters within the apps that I've recommended to make sure you're going to the places that's going to have the relevant speeds at which you need to charge. The other thing that's probably very good with the apps is most of them have pictures of the chargers that's been uploaded by fellow users such as yourself, and there's usually notes to say, oh, this charger is working slower than advertised, or it's not working at all, or it's under maintenance, or if there's like, say, 5 chargers that are available, 4 of them aren't working, or whatever. I mean, it's not uncommon for that, by the way. That's why it's one of the cons of actually owning an EV at the moment, that the infrastructure is not quite there yet. It's available, and for the most part, everybody you see who's driving an EV right now could still potentially be classed as an early adopter, and there's going to be some teething issues. But still, it's by and large quite fun to drive an electric vehicle, but you just kind of have to, if you love a rose, as they say, you have to put up with its thorns. And this is kind of one of the key things. The other app, and this is kind of more of a bonus app that's probably worthwhile downloading and having on your phone, is predominantly going to be useful when you want to plan majorly long road journeys, and that's actually called PlugShare. You can download and create an account with PlugShare, and you can then plan a route from one point to another, and it will give you the opportunity to pre-plan in advance where you're planning on doing the charge stops and how long you're going to be at those charging stations for. So you've got a fair idea, and also it gives you the option or the luxury to look up where other chargers might be in the vicinity of where you were planning to charge initially, because as I said, there's certain things that can go wrong, and there could be maintenance issues with certain chargers, especially if you're going between cities or between states. So these are the things that you kind of have to be mindful of. So these could all be sounding like quite detrimental, but not really. This is kind of me trying to help, for the most part, the new EV driver or the aspiring EV driver get ready for some of the expectations that they need to manage. And as I said, EVs are phenomenally fun to drive, but it is worthwhile considering how you're going to charge it, where you're going to charge it, how fast you need to charge it, and also if you're going to take a long road journey, how to pre-plan so that you're not going to be left out in the lurch because of it. So that's kind of the reason why I wanted to sort of create this video. There's probably going to be sort of follow-on videos to outline pros and cons of having an EV. But if you have any specific questions, please ask in the chat below, and I'll in the comments below, and I'll try to sort of respond back to it. And as I said, the reason why I make these videos is mainly because just to try and find sort of friends, as it were, more like-minded people that I can have a conversation or two about cars in any way, shape or form. By the way, I'm not just an EV nut. I love any vehicle. Anything that's motorized, by the way, is going to be in my wheelhouse. And if you want to sort of chat about any of those things, or you want a video about anything specific to do with EVs or ICE engine vehicles, or old cars, new cars, small cars, big cars, doesn't really matter. Just pop it in the comments below. I really appreciate your time in getting to the end of this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.